Hey everybody, Nemesis Bloodryce here, not the Great Demon, on the Great Demon's channel. Why am I here? Well, I was here in the last video. I voiced bass, so this shouldn't be too weird. Anyway, I'm here because I was actually very important in the script, or making the script of this episode. This is unscripted, by the way, this whole thing. What I want to do here is just go through some of the points that I scripted in the conclusion, primarily, and just talk about them, because obviously I couldn't put full detail into the conclusion without it becoming a complete clusterfuck. It's impossible to follow, and it just makes no sense at all, because there are points where you need to hold back some information that is not important, but does help to clarify things for the sake of making a better medium, because if you sacrifice the quality of your show for accuracy completely, you'll have a show that's horrible. Now, of course, there are some people that can pull it off, like Crossover X are actually fantastic at this part of creating versus shows. They manage to do the thing where they have all the information, but then also have a very entertaining show. And I think it was also Fatal Fiction that's no longer around that were also really good at this. I'm not going to say I'm a master of it. I don't do many serious fights on my channel. And one of the reasons is because when you do characters that are so in-depth, such as Metal Sonic, and I mean, bass is a bit less in-depth, but primarily like Metal Sonic, you do get a bit clusterfucky, and you have to be a really good writer. I don't really think I'm at that level yet, but I did tackle this because I wanted to see how I could do it, and I wanted to try like alleviate a lot of the impact that the Sonic community might have against Demon when the episode comes out. Because obviously, if you don't know, Metal Sonic loses, and when I first watched the original, I heavily disagreed. I thought Metal Sonic was universal, and he would school bass and also Zero. But there was a point where I thought, what the fuck am I doing? I'm just assuming that Metal Sonic is an equal to modern day Supersonic. At least Supersonic at the time of Rush and Generations and 06 and stuff. Oh, 06 is a whole other can of worms. Now the issue therein is that when I did do some more research on Metal Sonic, I found that there's actually not a lot to put him at that level. So, right now I've got a recording of my screen right now. I don't know why I said right now twice, and I actually went past the rules, but there's an important rule I want to talk about. The animation doesn't depict on how there's some minor typo in there, but what this essentially means is that the animation is not I hit the table. The animation is not exactly indicative of how the fight would necessarily go. This means that there is a point where Huand, the animator, my best mate, had the time bomb from bass actually activate and then bass attacked afterwards while it was active. Now this would not be possible, and I will bring this up when they talk about, I guess technically it's when I talk about through them. You know, it's weird, because it's like they're talking with my words about their opinion through themselves on this matchup. It's so weird. But they bring up the time bomb and how he would not be able to attack while it's active, but it still plays an advantage to his favor. And obviously the fight doesn't show it like that, because in the fight, Metal Sonic and Bass activate the time bomb and Chaos Control at the exact same time, and then they attack with the Kamehameha laser. This would not be possible in canon, because Bass, in the one game he has it, is not able to attack at all when it's active. You could say it's a gameplay mechanic, but there's no evidence to say that this is not also how it is in canon, or in the lore-wise part of the game characters. The thing with game characters, just to go on another tangent here, is that when you're doing a game character, you have to know the difference between what's purely a gameplay mechanic and what's purely lore. For instance, Supersonic in gameplay only lasts as long as you have rings, but in lore it has lasted several days on end in Sonic Advanced. Or was it Advanced 2? It was one of the first two Advanced games where it lasts several days after he uses it, with no indication of there being rings on the moon, because that would be weird. Another thing important here is non-canon is not allowed, but I did use stuff from the manga from Mega Man, and that's because the manga is not meant as a different continuity. It is meant kind of like what this is, this as a video to that video. It's an appendix to the games that add extra detail that was missing, because obviously they couldn't explain the game fully in an NES in the NES era, because NES wasn't really a platform designed for heavy story in video games. And there is a way, right, that you can make this fight completely ludicrous. If you go with a Metal Sonic that matches modern Sonic, and then you go with an Archie Mega Man level base, this fight becomes absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, now let's get to the actual point of the video. So I'm going to skip out the animation. Fantastic job by Huan, by the way. But if I go on about how good Huan's animation is, it's just going to sound like I'm shilling my channel. You should definitely go to Nemesis Bloodryce, and you definitely watch Not Death Battle. So let's take a look at some of the stuff they said.
It just repeated itself. Poor Metal Sonic. Oh well, let's explain why he loses again.
First, we have to establish how powerful Base
down.
is. Base is consistently shown to be able to match the power of Mega Man from Mega Man 1 all the way to Mega Man 10.
But not 11 because, you know, we can't have nice things.
In Mega Man 5's Game Boy release, Mega Man faces Sunstar, or Sun God in Japan. Sunstar was able to output 35.699 zenitons of TNT with his casual death bombs.
Now then, I think he said tenatons instead of centitons, which is what was listed earlier. If you're wondering what the name changed, I think I converted it between two different X tons of TNT to make it more comparable to the Space Colony Arc Explosion. Because if you just take like 4 centitons to 500 teratons, it sounds very similar, but if you have to like multiply the centitons by the difference between the two different units to get the actual difference in power. And that was important in determining how much more powerful Sunstar was compared to the Bio Lizard, or technically the Space Colony Arc, which scales to the Bio Lizard, or technically the Final Hazard, because that's when they actually combine. But of course the problem here, I think he's just talking about the death throws, or death bombs, I think they are in English.
And Mega Man was able to beat him without much problems. He was also likely more powerful than Wily's satellite.
Well, yes, and this is the point where I was talking about with the manga.
666 zenitons of TNT. Obviously, if Mega Man and Base are equals, Base must also be able to match this level of power.
Right, so I think actually what I was talking about with the conversion of units was more applicable for later. That was just a different thing they were talking about than what was brought up in the analysis. That was a far more casual feat from Sunstar to make it, because like, when you talk about their absolute maximum, there's going to be a lot of contention. So there are times you need to talk about what they can do on a casual level, and then say that that casual level is better than a highball of the other character. In this case, they're not doing that right now because they still haven't finished talking about Base. This might be a long video. I'm not sure how long this will be.
That much power without damaging himself, then he must be able to survive that much.
Now this is the thing. When you're doing a versus battle, really the most important calculation is how much power they can output. There are some times where a character can dodge around this, but according to physics, if they can output, say, 1 billion megatons without injuring themselves, that means that their body can also withstand that much force. Now, there are other things you should be able to extrapolate, but you can't really. For instance, you should be able to extrapolate how fast they are attacking based on the amount of megaton, or the amount of force they produce in newtons, and then the mass of whatever part of their body they're hitting with. However, you can't really do that, because sometimes it's a laser, or like a beam attack, or an energy attack. But there are also times where, obviously, the character isn't actually that fast, and it's not speed that's producing the energy, but something else, like some power cosmic or whatever. Now, there are times where this can be dumped around. As I said earlier, if your character, say, has an immunity to fire, and they have a mountain-level body, they can only withstand and dish out mountain-level attacks, but if they're immune to the effects of fire, they could produce a continent-level fire attack without injuring themselves, not because of their ability, but because of the fallacy of that immunity. It is a way to jump around it. However, Base does not have that. Base does not have any sort of immunities at all, really. So, if he scales to Mega Man and Mega Man can withstand that and output that, he should be able to scale.
With speed, Base is able to scale to speeds of Mega Man. These include his well-known feats. They're able to match and react to the speed of Quick Man, but also
which, according to Death Battle, is his limit.
Moving through the asteroid belt on Space Rush at 25 times the speed of light. Reactive to attacks from Dr. Wily moving at 250 times the speed of light. Obviously, this speed cannot scale to actual combat or movement speed. All this means that Mega Man is able to respond and process information of objects and attacks moving at 250 times the speed of light. Something that Base must be able to do as well if he can match Mega Man.
Alright, so I don't think they did not show the actual clip from the Game Boy game where this happens. I think it was Mega Man 5 as well. Now, what happens in the game is that he gets an upgrade for Rush called Space Rush, and he rides Space Rush through an asteroid belt while Wily is shooting lasers at him. Now, what he means by this does not scale to combat or movement speed is that in this moment, Mega Man can't travel at speed. Now, later on in the timeline, I think he can because he was able to match Duo, but at this point in time, he wasn't yet. Now, this is a low ball. If you don't want to count the Duo calc and you don't want to count the Quickman calc, this one is really hard to deny because it is a fact that Mega Man was able to control Rush with reactionary speed up to 20-something times the speed of light. Now, he can't fight at that speed because he wasn't actually moving his body at that speed, and he can't move at that speed because if he could, he would not need a Rush upgrade to move at that speed. Now, you could say that if Mega Man had like a straight line, he might be able to run at that speed, and the only reason he got Space Rush was for atmospheric and spacefaring flight. You could say that, but then once again, that's going into the territory, like giving Sonic fans a lot of ammo to derail your argument because you're using a lot of hypotheticals. The argument they can't derail is that Mega Man was able to react to and command Rush at those speeds. How exactly he was able to do that, because he would be communicating through radio waves or sound, one of which doesn't work in space, and the other one of which is slower than the attacks going at him, I don't know. That's just one of the suspension of disbelief things you have to do. I mean, I could say the same thing for how Metal Sonic is able to react, because reaction is based on electronics in the brain, like electricity and stuff, and for Metal Sonic it's electronics. And how are they able to move at several times the speed of light when they shouldn't be able to? I can say the same for Metal Sonic as I could for Mega Man. So what's being said here is essentially that Base should be able to react to the speeds that Metal Sonic can muster, even if Metal Sonic is that much faster than him.
If Mega Man really couldn't move at those speeds, then he wouldn't have needed to use a new form of Rush, specifically to travel at set speed.
They actually just said it.
He would have been able to get by just by combining with Rush in one way or another. However, during the events of Mega Man 8, Mega Man was able to fight and move at speeds fast enough to take on Duo. During the duel,
that's actually very important there.
Enters his meteor form,
yes, he attacks with his meteor form multiple times, and Mega Man is able to dodge.
In 38 seconds, moving at 55 times the speed of light.
And of course, Base can further increase his power by the undefined amount with Super Base.
Now the thing there is that Duo, obviously, he probably moves faster in the vacuum of space than he does in an atmosphere, because in the vacuum of space, there's obviously really nothing to get between you and your destination. I mean, there can be, but for the most part, space is a vacuum, so obviously there's no air. However, I think at the speeds he's moving at, there comes a point where being in atmosphere really doesn't matter a whole lot. Now, even if you said that he's only half his speed, this means that Mega Man was able to dodge attacks from Duo that were equal to half the speed of his movement speed in space. So he's still Mark 22. That's still really, well, that's still 20, not Mark 22. That's still 22C, or 22 times the speed of light. That is incredibly fast, and that really does put a lot in Base's advantage, because he can react to things at 25 times the speed of light, and 28 times the speed of light, and then move and fight at 22 times the speed of light. And now, obviously, in real life, a 6 times the speed of light difference is incredible. But in the world of Mega Man, that's not a huge difference.
But that's clearly not what people are questioning. Yes, Base is that strong.
Yes, this is the part I was most worried about. We're just talking about my headphones are backwards.
First, we have to discuss every single time Metal Sonic has faced Sonic, and determine at which point he faced
Yes, so this is the most
Sonic.
important part about
His
talking about
fights
Metal
happen
Sonic as a
facing
character,
classic Sonic and Sonic
is
Sonic 4,
the actual
Sonic
fights that
Generation
he's gone up
Beast
against
Sonic
Sonic,
and Sonic
or at least the
obviously.
timelines of Sonic
Sonic
is up
4 is
against.
where he's at his strongest. However, in that game, Metal Sonic doesn't actually.
Yes, so when I did research, I found that the only canonical times he fights Sonic are in Sonic Generations, which is classic Sonic, Sonic 4, which is classic Sonic, Sonic CD, which is classic Sonic, Sonic Heroes, which is Dreamcast era Sonic, and Sonic Forces, which is not the real Metal Sonic, so it can't really be applied here, because, I mean, in that game, what's his name? Infinite uses the Phantom Ruby from Sonic Mania to create copies of everyone, such as the leader of the Deadly Six, I think they're called Shadow Chaos, who never does anything, and Metal Sonic. So clearly it's not one-to-one comparable, because if it was, then you could easily say that Metal Sonic at his base is star level, because Sonic is star level in that game, or at least small star level, because he was able to at least be half as strong as Infinite, who could easily create a large star, or drag one over. I don't know if he created it or dragged it over, but it was a large star level feat. So, you could say that, But, and obviously that would give Metal Sonic the win. But then the fact is, that's not the real Metal Sonic. That's a Metal Sonic made by Infinite, not the Metal Sonic made by Eggman. So it's not applicable.
Fight Sonic in his base form, but rather he has to power up all the way to Metal Overlord. This always means that base Metal Sonic is way weaker than base Hero Sonic.
So how powerful is Sonic and Sonic Heroes? Well, determining that...
He's about to say it's not easy to find, and no, it was a gigantic pain in the ass for me to actually find numbers and such to apply to base Sonic, whether I went on dodgy sites like Versus Wiki or more understandable ones like the Naruto forums and Respect threads to find calcs. It was really hard. Now, the important thing to note here is that Metal Sonic does not face Sonic in his base form. This means that Metal Sonic's base should be weaker than Sonic's base. And while you could say that maybe Neo Metal Sonic or Metal Madness, who they didn't show in this because he's barely even visible in his own game, like they didn't actually show a clip of Metal Madness because you barely see him at all. They could be stronger than base Sonic, but they're not as strong as Super Sonic because he had to go to Metal Overlord to be feel assured that he could beat Super Sonic.
Isn't exactly the easiest, as he hasn't really had many great feats in his base form. What can be stated, however, is that his base form has to have been weaker than his super form in Sonic Adventure 2, which was around Moon level. As such, Metal Sonic's base form at its strongest couldn't possibly be higher than Moon level. The Space Colony arc could only output 28 teratons of TNT, which is 1,250,000,000 times less powerful than even Sunstar, whom base is at least.
Right, so what was being said here, honestly, it's very clear. Obviously, base Sonic has to be weaker than Super Sonic, otherwise the multiplier of Super Sonic would be completely irrelevant to his power level, and all he'd really get is flight, which obviously would help, and obviously maybe a speed boost. My mic's making a buzzing sound. But in terms of his actual raw attack power and how much he can take durability-wise, obviously it has to be less than Super Sonic. Now, Super Sonic at this point can only really scale to about maybe half the power, or a bit more than half the power, of Final Hazard form of the Bio-Lizard, who, at minimum, has to be this level of power. Now, obviously, you could say, well, the Final Hazard is stronger than the Bio-Lizard and has more Chaos Emeralds in it than the Space Colony Arc when it did when it destroyed the Moon. Now, that is definitely true. The Space Colony Arc is probably not as powerful in that scene as the Final Hazard is at the end of the game. Oh, it's a car making that sound. Yeah, Made Over the Road has a really strong engine in his car. It's probably what's making the rumbling sound all the way here. Anyway, what this means is, yes, Final Hazard might be 2, 3, maybe even 4 times stronger than that Space Colony Arc explosion, but the fact is that the calculation for Sunstar puts him at over 1 billion times stronger. So unless you're going to tell me that the Final Hazard is over 1 billion times stronger than the Space Colony Arc explosion, and that Super Sonic is... But you have to say Super Sonic is 1 billion times stronger, and the Final Hazard is over 2 to 3 billion times stronger than that attack, and that's just ridiculous. So really, it's not going to be easy. You can't just say Metal Sonic is that level of power, because that is insane. So Metal Sonic at minimum would be, at maximum would be this level. That is the maximum you could conceivably put him at. And that's like part of the argument here, is that if a hypothetical maximum Metal Sonic is weaker than a casual base, then how could this base Metal Sonic be stronger than base? That's very confusing to say because of base's name.
In terms of speed,
I should have just called him Forte throughout this whole video.
at this point in the time, Sonic's light speed dash was still faster than his base movement. While this might seem pointless in later games such as Unleash, he actually goes slower at light speed. And it took to Sonic Colors for someone to calculate him at around light speed in universe. This obviously takes place.
Right, so, I don't think you got the inflection right there. What he was supposed to be saying is, it might seem irrelevant that in Sonic Heroes the light speed dash is faster than his movement speed, but then in Sonic Unleashed, and I think Sonic Colors with the Jet or Hover Wisp, I think the Hover Wisp, I love that game by the way, when he does the light speed dash, it's actually slower than his maximum speed in game. This obviously raises the implication that Sonic is faster than light speed. And when he's talking about the calc, he didn't show it here, but what he's talking about is when Omega, I forgot the actual serial number to his unit, I didn't want to be like E107 and be wrong. But when Omega calculates him in Sonic Color DS, he says that the speed of light will be surpassed soon. And this means that at that point, Sonic had to be moving at relativistic speeds. Now, Sonic does say that light speed is no problem for him. I'm hoping I'm getting these right. Yes, he does. And like Death Battle did point this out too, that obviously he's boasting. He's not saying factually, I can easily outpace light speed. The thing there is, though, that while obviously he's being cocky, this doesn't mean that he wasn't reaching light speed. Obviously, what Omega says is true. Sonic does increase his speed over the course of the game, he gets faster, so by that point, at least he had to have reached light speed. The problem therein is that means that base Sonic and Sonic Color just reached light speed. What chance in hell is there that Classic or Dreamcast era Sonic could? And I know that Sonic Heroes was technically on the GameCube, but Dreamcast era is more or less Sonic Adventure to Sonic Heroes. Or I guess you could also include Sonic, or you could also include Shadow the Hedgehog in that.
After Sonic Heroes, so this means that Sonic in this game was slower than Duo.
Well, yeah,
it does
like
slower
you
than
said.
Base. This also means that Metal Sonic, who is consistently around the same.
What that means is that obviously you could say that modern Sonic is faster than Duo right now, but at that point, modern Sonic was not 55 times the speed of light.
Speed can't exceed light speed. Now, this isn't to say that modern Sonic isn't light speed. As stated before, he exceeds his own light speed dash in later games. He can outpass stars in Sonic Colors DS, but Metal Sonic has never fought a Sonic at this level.
Yes.
This means that at base, Metal Sonic
He
is
has not. He is only for at best Hero Sonic.
Times less powerful than base, and 55 times slower. But of course, that's not Metal Sonic at his best. Well, we don't know how powerful Neo Metal Sonic or Metal Madness are, seeing as he does not attempt to face Sonic until
It's irrelevant, yeah. Which they bring up.
It is likely that he remains weaker than
Oh
Sonic.
no, they did show Metal Madness. There he
Overlord,
is.
however, well, that's
I actually really like how Metal. I actually think I prefer
So now,
Metal
how
Madness's
powerful
look
is
over Metal
Super
Overlord.
Sonic? Nowadays,
Not
he
important.
can be maybe universal, defeating 4 different universal threats: the Time Eater, Solaris, Egg Salamander, Egg Wizard. But back then,
Right, so what this means is that the Egg Wizard and the Egg Salamander were going to fuse Blaze and Sonic's universe together. Now, obviously that doesn't necessarily mean they can output universal level, but it does put them at the level where they can move or fuse universes. That means that if they could convert that power into attack power, they would be universal. But they're like the least important of this part. The most important are the Time Eater and Solaris. Now, the Time Eater was going to destroy all timelines. Each one of those timelines is at least a universe. So that means that he must at least be universe level if he can eat one timeline, which is one universe. You could say he's multiversal, but I'm not going to get into that can of worms, because I don't necessarily agree. I don't disagree either. I'm more on the fence about that. What this means is that the Time Eater is at least universal, though, and Solaris is described as an extra-dimensional being. Solaris should be at least 4-dimensional, and that's really strong. That means he has to be universal. So these characters, the Solaris is also going to destroy all timelines, and he exists in the past, present, and future simultaneously as one entity. So he has to be 4-dimensional and universal. That makes him very powerful, and while Sonic didn't solo him, he was able to, fight him, obviously. I don't actually think he soloed any of these entities by himself, because obviously he was the strongest against all 4 entities when he fought them, but against the Salamander and Wizard he needed Burning Blaze, against Solaris he needed Super Shadow and Super Silver, and against the Time Eater he needs Super Young himself. That's just an interesting little thing I noticed.
less so. Super Sonic at this point was only around the levels of Perfect Chaos in the Bio Lizard. So even if we say that Super Sonic is 1 billion times more powerful than the Space Colony Arc, he's still only around the power of base. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that Super Sonic is around the power
That's
of Super
important.
Base. This means that Metal Overlord can now beat base? Well, Metal Overlord was still beaten by Super Sonic and couldn't even damage him. In fact, the 2 characters that have are Solaris and Dark Gaia. One who is a universe threat, and one who could turn off the Chaos Emeralds.
Yes, Eggman did state that.
Yes, thank you to, I think it was Excalibur something. He did a video on Mario vs. Sonic from Death Battle, and he brought this to my attention, not directly, indirectly, and I did some extra research to verify his claim, and as it turns out, yeah, it's true that canonically, the only characters, sorry, I had to pause there because I heard a dog. I thought it might have been my parents. The only characters to canonically damage Supersonic have been Solaris, an extra-dimensional being, universal, possibly low multiversal, who also took on Supersonic, Super Shadow, and Super Silver simultaneously. So, strong as shit, way stronger than Metal Overlord, and Dark Gaia. And I also rewatched the intro to verify his claim on what Dark Gaia is capable of. Yes, when Dark Gaia awakens, it turns off the Chaos Emeralds. This means that Dark Gaia obviously is an inherent counter to the Chaos Emeralds. And even then, Sonic still one-shots him when he actually gets a chance to. But he is the only character that could damage Supersonic. And that was able to get by the whole output of attack equals durability by turning off his durability. So I just thought that was interesting to bring up. And it is important because it means Metal Overlord is weaker than them.
Yes, Eggman did state that he doubted the Chaos Emeralds could beat Metal Overlord, but this is definitely not applicable, seeing as we've seen the Chaos Emeralds far surpass what people felt were their limits later in the series. Although, admittedly,
that's very
teams
true.
of characters at once couldn't beat him, so clearly they have to be way more powerful than most characters within his game, but if Base is over 1 billion times more powerful, then that barely changes anything.
Metal Overlord is exactly about his
Unless you're going to say that all those characters combined equals billions of times more power than what the Arc could output, which seems ridiculous to me. And I think you'd agree, it's a bit ridiculous to say that Vector, SBO, Charmy, Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, Rouge, Omega, Shadow, Amy, and Chi, and Cream are equal to the calling. Now, you might be able to say Big the Cat is, because Big the Cat's our Lord and Savior. But no, you can't say that those 12 characters combined are equal to Sunstar at that point in time, at least. Because that would be absolutely ridiculous to say that, like, what's a billion divided by 12? Still a shit ton. Like, it's still a couple 100 million. And they have not grown that strong in that time. There's no indicator for that.
Sonic and Heroes is most likely at the light speed level, but so is Base. Even if you
no, yes, I had nothing to verify that Supersonic is actually light speed in Sonic Heroes. I'm just saying that for the sake of argument.
That Base can move at 55 times the speed of light. His ability to equal a Mega Man who could fight at being that speed means that either Base is faster than Metal Sonic, or Metal Sonic's speed advantage isn't enough to make a meaningful difference as Metal Overlord.
And this is another one of those points where I bring up this tactic of mine. I pretty much put people who root for Metal Sonic in a bit of a box there, because in saying that, they have two ways out. They can agree with one of the sides, or they can just completely ignore all the evidence, at which point they've beaten themselves, essentially. So what I'm saying here is that either Metal Sonic is not at that light speed level, so that means that his base is faster at least, or his speed advantage is not enough to actually matter, because the speed at which base is able to react if we assume the duo calc is bunk. Why did I press that?
Essentially, the numbers here really don't go in Metal Sonic's favor. In his base form, he's brutally creamed by Base, and as Metal Overlord, the best he could hope for is to roughly match Base. But let's say he did, for the sake of argument. What if Metal Overlord was able to match the power of Base?
Which he can't.
Yes, but
okay,
what if?
He can't.
This is one of those points where they kind of went off script and they just had some fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. I've done that a lot with Louis. There is a point when you're working on a video and you just have too much fun the recording and you just find it too entertaining not to leave in.
Supposedly,
so go ahead and
you want to get your ass kicked by me?
Not particularly, not in this environment.
The conclusion for this point is that the numbers, not hypotheticals, because talking about hypotheticals and about power levels in the matter of continent, planet, moon and stuff, there is a lot of wriggle room. When you're talking about that to make an argument for why a weaker character should win, you could use fallacies, you could use bunk calculations, but there is a point when you have to look at the raw numbers. And looking at the raw numbers here, Base just has such a huge advantage. He has so much more power at his base form than... And by the way, this is making the assumption that over the course of Mega Man 5 and Mega Man 10, Base has gotten no stronger at all, except for in speed, obviously. That his attack power has maintained the exact same level. He is billions of times stronger, or a billion and a bit times stronger, than the Space Colony Arc. And there's no evidence to put any characters at a level of power that is a billion and a bit times stronger than that, until we're past Sonic Heroes in the time of Sonic 06. And that is completely inapplicable because Metal Sonic never fights Sonic after Sonic Heroes, at least canonically, in a way that would put him at that level of power. So, naturally, this would mean Base has to be stronger, has to be tougher, and is either faster, or his reaction speed is too fast for the speed boost Metal Sonic has over him to matter.
You're in your home advantage, but supposedly, if he could...
I don't know why, but I thought he was about to say cunt there when the words are coming, but I'm Australian, that's me.
Overlord still has a literally massive disadvantage against Base. He is absolutely massive. Well,
Yes, that's Metal Overlord's big weakness. If they were equal, 100% equal, he's huge. He's very easy to hit, and Metal Overlord have a hard time. So unless Metal Overlord has a huge advantage, stat-wise, that size is a huge advantage.
Cage people, but he does have one attack of note. Chaos Control.
I didn't actually think they brought up the Black Shield or VMAX. Well, I guess it's my fault. I never brought up the Black Shield or VMAX from Overdrive in this conclusion, but I don't think they really matter.
He can completely freeze time. And yeah, that's good enough, but Base can also freeze time.
If you say that Base time freeze doesn't counter Metal Overlord, as he doesn't have time to react to use it, then the same goes the either way. Metal Overlord might get a good hit on Base, but then Base will do the same thing back. What
was being said there, what is about to be said, is that you could say that Base can't counter Chaos Control because he doesn't have the ability to react instantaneously. Because you have to react within the plank instances when the pulse is going out to freeze. Because like Chaos Control has like a pulse that emanates from the character. So unless Base has like plank speed reaction time to active and can switch to his time bomb and fire it off at the same, well, it wouldn't even matter. Well, I guess it does, because a time bomb is more instantaneous than Chaos Control. But it means that for either character to counter the other, they need to have that level of speed, and neither of them do. That would be ridiculous. But the point is that if Metal Overlord can freeze time, but Base can't counter that, then the same goes the other way. And in fact, it's in more in Base's advantage, because the time bomb act is more instantaneous than Chaos Control. But that's a completely irrelevant argument. What's important is that they can't counter each other. However, the thing is that Metal Overlord can physically attack you when Chaos Control is active. I don't think he can use his lasers and such, because obviously time is frozen, but he can bash you over the head, and Base hasn't shown the ability to do that. You'd assume he can, but the thing with Metal Overlord is that his physical attack power is incredibly high, and Base relies a lot on his weapons, which would be completely useless in frozen time. And that is probably, lore-wise, the reason why Mega Man can't use his weapons when he freezes time, and the same with Base, is because they're all projectiles. So if he did, he'd fire them off, and when he walks forward, or he moves his arm down, the explosion would happen within his cannon. And that wouldn't be good for anyone, unless he just, like, walked up to someone, fired a bunch of shots, but then, like, moonwalked out, so the blast left his cannon, and then turned time back. That would be too much hassle. So, yeah.
Not directly during freeze time, he can use it to freeze time to get behind Metal Overlord.
Although that's not exactly how frozen time works.
And land an attack before his foe has a chance to react.
Just like the visual there.
Time freeze has limited ammo, but it's unlikely that this will play that much of a role, as Base will likely be able to kill Metal Overlord before he runs out of ammo.
I don't think I need to even clarify what he said there. That's very clear.
Base has a massive arsenal in comparison to Metal Overlord, with the Doppler attack allowing him to create 4 clones, becoming invincible and intangible. Forte Cyclone allowing him to blast through
barriers. For the most part, the time bomb was the only really important thing from those era of games. But yes, he does have a Doppler that multiplies him 4 times and makes him invincible.
With the Super Base, he can fly too, allowing him to outmaneuver Metal Overlord.
So it's...
Okay, now there's an important thing that you could say Metal Overlord can also fly. How the fuck does Base match that? Now, it is important to note that Base Forte can only dash and double jump, and while that does give him a really high advantage over Mega Man, this does mean that Metal Overlord, for the most part, doesn't have to worry about being outmaneuvered. But Super Base can fly, and while both Metal Overlord and Base in his super form can fly, the issue is that Super Base is so small in comparison to Metal Overlord, he'd easily outmaneuver him. Easily.
Basically what we're saying is that Metal Sonic is no match, Metal Overlord still is not strong enough, and even if Metal Overlord was strong enough, Base still holds many advantages in his arsenal.
That is exactly what I just finished saying, yes. And let's also include Metal Sonic's copy ability as well. Both Mega Man and Base have copied many Robot Masters before, but their copies are basic versions and what's shown not to be as powerful as the original Robot Masters versions. So Metal Sonic's copy ability would basically make an inferior copy of an already inferior copy, so it wouldn't help him as much as people would think.
So in the end, Metal Sonic might have a little chance with Metal Overlord and his chaos.
Right, so let's take a look at the advantages they show here. Metal Sonic advantage and Metal Overlord. For the most part, yes, because they also put Super Base there as an advantage for base. Chaos Control, and they also gave Time Summon for base too, so that's more of an equal sign. And yes, Metal Sonic has more super forms than base, but base has better versatility and better stats. Now let's take a look at their minuses and see how well these apply. Metal Sonic can easily overheat himself. I don't think that will play much of a point. Far lower stat line than base. That is incredibly important, even though they spelled base's name wrong. Oh no, that's not what they meant. That's not what they meant. I'm a moron. They meant far lower base. I was thrown off by the capital B. His base stats are lower than base's base stats. Copy powers aren't perfect. For the most part, base's copy powers are perfect. At least... Okay, it's hard to say, because Metal Sonic's copies are weaker than what he can do, and Base and Mega Man are far more limited in what they can do, but more or less you could say that Metal Sonic's copying is worse than theirs, except that he can pull off his copying in the middle of a fight without killing his opponent. And yes, Metal Sonic has an imperfect Chaos Control. If he had a perfect Chaos Control, I honestly think that would give him a huge advantage. It might even sway the match in his favor in a hypothetical, because he'd be able to teleport in real time, and he'd be able to teleport like Base into a sun. And yes, more arrogant, more hot-headed, that's very true. I can take these off now. Now, for people who still think Metal Sonic should win, I'm just going to lay down some things that you would need to say are applicable for Metal Sonic to beat Base. You would have to say, Metal Sonic, as well as Super Sonic, is over 1 billion times stronger than the Space Colony arc during the time of Sonic Adventure 2. This means that between Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Heroes, all the characters and Base and Metal Sonic have gotten roughly 1 billion times stronger than that Space Colony arc laser. You would also have to say that Metal Sonic is, for instance, at that level, you have to say that Metal Overlord is 1 billion times stronger than Super Sonic at that point in time from Sonic Adventure 2. Or, you would have to say that Sunstar's planet-busting feat is not at planet level. You would have to say that when he caused the explosion that destroyed the star-sized Wily Star, and mind you, the calculation that was used in this battle was assuming that the Wily Star is only at the size of one planet, you would have to say that that explosion was not equal to the explosion that destroyed that chunk of the moon. Or you have to say it was less than twice as strong as that moon explosion. Essentially, you have to put Metal Sonic at a level that's that's over 1 billion times stronger than that moon explosion to match Base, or you have to say that Sunstar did not destroy a planet-level entity when he destroyed the Wily Star. One of those statements is just wrong, that being the Sunstar one. The other statement is ridiculous. So, there does come a point where you really just can't make an argument for why Metal Sonic should win unless you do some pretzel logic. Like, obviously, if you include the Archie comics, so I think there's a Metal Sonic in Archie, he would absolutely obliterate Base. It would not even be a competition. But, I mean, at that point you could put in Base EXE or something, and you've got a more ridiculous fight. If someone wants to do that, Archie Metal Sonic versus Base.exe, I'd be very interested in seeing that fight. But, this is not an idea video. Basically, this is just an appendix to the original video. I'm going to finish this now. Goodbye. Yeah, I really have no other conclusion. I've made all my points. I've clarified a lot of the things that I put in the video. If you still disagree, and say you think that I'm over-exaggerating things, even though I'm trying to be very lenient for Metal Sonic, and I'm trying to very much limit Base, because, like, the thing is that Metal Sonic can't possibly be as strong as Sonic 06 level Sonic, while Base can't possibly be as strong as Zero. So you're kind of working within those limitations. And in case you're running Zero Solar System level, and Sonic 06 Supersonic is universal. So that's all I gotta say. Goodbye. If you still disagree, that's fine. Just don't be an asshole about it. And if you're going to get shitty at anyone for the victor, get shitty at me. Get shitty at me for that. Don't get shitty at Demon. He did do the research and say the base one, but I'm the one who wrote the conclusion. So if you have any issues with it, get shitty at me. Don't get angry at Demon. He's done nothing wrong. Goodbye.